This is where we left in the previous video by configuring passport. In this video, let's focus on the login in logic, which means that we are going to create the login controller. So let me close all instances. Inside the controllers of users, we are going to create one for the login in. This is for the registration. So here is going to be as login, and then async handler, and then pass in our callback function as rec, and then the response. And here we go. Remember, since we are using passport, we need to allow passport to log in. Therefore, we need to bring in the passport package as passport. And the auto import is fine, which is this. And let me bring it up there. Perfect. So inside the controller here for logging in, we are going to use a method on the passport called authenticate. It's supposed to be lowercase authenticate. And then as a function call. And this function, unless we call it immediately by using a concept called IFI, and that is immediately invoked function. So here I'm going to call the function as that by bringing one more curly braces as that. This is what we call IFI, that is immediately invoked function, which means that as soon as we hit this controller, this function will be called automatically. And upon calling, we have access to the rec, the response, and then the next here. So let's focus on the argument that this function is going to take. And this function is going to take in two arguments. The first one is going to be the strategy, in this case local strategy. And the second argument is going to be a callback function as that. And inside the callback function, we have access to the actual user, and then the info about the login user. So now inside here, we are going to check. In case we have an error, then we are going to return by calling next, and then pass in the error message, which means that we need to pass in next to the login also here, as we did in the previous videos. So here we're going to pass in the error here, which means that in case we have an error, we're going to pass to next, and next here we're going to be the error handler that we have already implemented. Before we continue, let's log the info, and let's try to kick in to make sure that this one is working before we continue to implement the remaining logics. So let's go ahead and then create a route for this one. And we have the controller here, duplicate and change this one to log in. Have you seen how our life is becoming more easier? Now let's go ahead and then create one for logging in. This one is login, and then the endpoint here is logged in, and I'm passing in, let me copy this one for the login in, and let me remove the email, and let's try out. Have you seen our server is hanging? And let's check the terminal, and we got undefined. Well, I think we made some mistake here where it's supposed to be the user instead. So let me console log the user, and let me try again. And now let's check. As you can see, we have the user down here. If I cancel it and then provide wrong login details, for example, this one, and let me change the username instead because I'm not checking for the password. So let me change the username. And as you can see, we got false over here, meaning that the user is not found. Awesome. So let's continue with the implementation. Now we know that this user represents the user who is logging in or the login user. What has left is that we need to generate a token for it. But at this point, you may be asking, what is the info? The info contains information about the user in case the user login details are not correct. So let's go ahead and then also log the info. And remember, I'm passing in wrong details. So let's try out and let's check the console one more time. As you can see, we got missing credentials. Let me provide the credential and then something like this. I know that this username doesn't exist. And let's try out. As you can see, invalid login details, which means that our passport configuration for the local is working perfectly. Let me show you where we got that message. In this case, it is called invalid login details. But in case the username is correct, but the password is incorrect, let's see. Now we got invalid login details. As you can see with passport, it is making our life easier. The initial setup, that looks a little bit confusing in case you are new, but after that, you're gonna enjoy it. Alright, so let's continue with the configuration or the login logic. So here, in case you don't have the user, then let's throw some error. So here, check if user not found or exist. So it's going to be as if there is no user in the callback function. We are going to return use res.status provide 401 and then .json provide the message, and we will say info.message as you saw inside the console. Now with this one, we're gonna see the response. Let's try out. And now we got invalid login details. Awesome. So the next step is that we need to generate a token and assign to this user, as we have already explored under the JWT overview. So how are we going to generate the token? And it is easy when using Express. So down here, we will say that generate token, which is equal to const token, which is equal to, let's bring in the JWT here as const JSON web token, and down here JWT dot sign, meaning that what identity that we want to sign with about the user, either the ID or the username or the email. So over here, make sure to provide a unique identifier about the user. So for this, we can use username, because over here, and that is upon registration, we are checking in case the username exists. Then we will throw an error, meaning that the user cannot register. But let's use more reliable property, and that is the ID of the user. So here I'm going to specify the ID of the user, which can be found on the user._ID. And the second argument is going to be the JWT secret. So here, let's also provide it inside the environment variable. And remember, like I said, that I'm using my local connection string than to use the live connection string. This one doesn't change anything. So here, I'm going to provide the JWT secret, and you can use any random string of characters as that. Perfect. So let's go ahead and then use it here as process.env.jwt_secret. Awesome. So we are done with the creating of the token. So let's go ahead and log the token to make sure that everything is working fine. Let me provide the right password, and let's check inside the console. And now we got the token. So at this point, we need to decide where do you want to save this token, so that upon every request, the user will send this token for authorization. All right, so we are going to save it inside the session. So here we're going to use session strategy here than to save this one inside the user browser, and that is the local storage. So down here we will say that set the token into the cookie, and one advantage is that this one is secured, meaning that there will be no client-side JavaScript that can interact with our token. And also, upon making request, this token will be automatically attached to the request header without us manually passing in the token. That is awesome, right? So how are we going to set it inside the cookie? And I'm going to have it as res.cookie, and Express make it easy to use that by setting cookie. And inside, we're going to provide 3 arguments. One is going to be the placeholder or the variable, and the second one is going to be the actual token, and lastly is going to be this configuration. Here, the key property here is called HTTP only, meaning that we want to set the token over HTTP only. And then next one is going to be secured, and for this, let's say false. And then same site, also we're going to use straight. And then maximum age, meaning when do you want to expire this cookie or token. And here we're going to use 1 day, and it goes like this: 24 by 60 by 60 by 1000. All right, so last step is that we need to send the response, and it goes like this: res.json, and then provide status code of success, and then the message is equal to login success, and then I will send the username to the user as username is equal to user dot username, and then provide the email also as email is equal to user dot email, and the ID is equal to user underscore ID. So with this one, let's see the results. If I try again, as you can see, login success. But one good thing is that, and that is using the cookie with a token, is that when a user logs in, automatically the browser is going to set the token for us without us manually setting. So if I check inside the headers here, which is this one, and if you look at the cookie here, as you can see, we have our token being set for us. This is our token. If you check in our terminal, as you can see, the token ends with LO, which is the same as this one, LO. It means that the cookie has been set for us automatically with this value. Likewise, on the client side, if you log in, it's going to set the token inside the cookie. All right, so now the logging in logic is working fine. And one thing here is that at this point, we are not sending the token back to the user to be saved inside the local storage, but instead it is the server that's going to set the token for us, and for this nobody can tamper with it with JavaScript. Awesome. Let's continue in the next video.